A slammed door, an eye roll, a sharp dismissive tone. Many adults label teen disrespect as attitude or poor upbringing. But what if that's only the surface? What if disrespect is actually a signal, not the problem itself? Behind teenage defiance is a mix of emotional overload, unmet needs, and a rapidly changing brain struggling to be heard. To address the behavior, we must first understand the real reasons it shows up. Teenagers experience emotions with an intensity that can feel overwhelming, both to themselves and to the adults around them. Their brains are still developing, particularly the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for decision-making, impulse control, and rational thinking. This part of the brain matures well into their mid-20s, meaning that their ability to pause, reflect, and respond thoughtfully is still limited. Meanwhile, the limbic system, the part of the brain that processes emotions, is already highly active. This imbalance explains why teens often react to situations with heightened emotional responses, even when the situation may seem minor to an adult. A simple disagreement or correction can trigger an outsized reaction, leading to eye rolls, sharp words, or even slamming doors. It is not simply defiance. It is the natural result of a brain still learning how to manage emotions effectively. Beyond brain development, teens are navigating a stage of life filled with social and personal pressures. Friendships, romantic interests, academic expectations, and self-image all collide, creating a storm of emotional stimuli that can be difficult to manage. When overwhelmed, they may lash out or retreat, often appearing disrespectful. From an adult perspective, this behavior can seem intentional or manipulative, but in reality, it is a coping mechanism, a way to express frustration when they lack the tools to articulate their feelings calmly. Teens may feel misunderstood or unheard, which compounds emotional responses. Their behavior is an urgent signal of their internal state, a call for guidance and patience rather than punishment. The emotional intensity of adolescence is compounded by hormonal changes that influence mood and stress levels. Fluctuations in hormones like testosterone and estrogen can amplify sensitivity to criticism, social rejection, or conflict. A minor comment that might be shrugged off by an adult can feel like a personal attack to a teen. Combined with the still, maturing brain structures responsible for regulating emotions, it is easy to see why reactions can appear disproportionate. These responses are rarely calculated. They are instinctive. Understanding this can help adults respond with empathy, providing support and modeling calm behavior rather than escalating conflict. In addition, teens are learning how to navigate independence and identity, while still relying on adults for guidance. The challenge of balancing autonomy with guidance can trigger defensive behaviors when they feel constrained or misunderstood. Emotional outbursts, which may be labeled as disrespectful, often emerge from the struggle to assert themselves while still processing complex internal feelings. By recognizing that these behaviors stem from neurological and emotional development, rather than deliberate defiance, adults can approach situations with more patience. Constructive communication and validation of feelings can help teens gradually develop better coping mechanisms. Ultimately, what often appears as disrespect is a reflection of the brain's developmental stage and the emotional turbulence of adolescence. Teens are still learning to regulate impulses, understand their emotions, and navigate social pressures. Their reactions, while sometimes frustrating or challenging, are rarely personal attacks. They are expressions of a mind still figuring out how to function in a complex world. Adults who recognize this reality and respond with understanding, guidance, and patience can help teens develop the skills they need to manage emotions and communicate respectfully as they mature. Many teenagers act disrespectfully because they feel unheard or invalidated in their daily lives. At this stage, they are developing a sense of self and trying to assert their identity, but they often encounter adults who dismiss their opinions or feelings simply because of their age. Being constantly corrected, ignored, or told that you don't understand can create a sense of frustration and invisibility. When teens feel that their thoughts and emotions don't matter, they may resort to sarcasm, eye rolls, or arguing, not because they want to be difficult, but because they are seeking acknowledgement. Disrespect, in this sense, becomes a form of communication, a way to reclaim attention and assert that their perspective deserves to be recognized. The feeling of being unheard can affect teens deeply because adolescence is a critical period for social and emotional development. They are learning to process complex emotions, navigate relationships, and form independent opinions. When their feelings are invalidated, it can create a cycle of resentment and withdrawal. A teen who constantly feels dismissed may stop expressing themselves openly or may do so through negative behavior, assuming that respectful communication won't lead to any change. The behavior is less about challenging authority and more about expressing the need to be seen and understood. Validation. Acknowledging a teen's emotions and perspectives can significantly reduce the need for such defensive actions. Teens are especially sensitive to tone and context. Even well-intentioned advice can be interpreted as criticism if delivered in a dismissive or condescending way. For example, a parent saying, "You're overreacting," might intend to calm the situation but inadvertently communicates that the teen's feelings are unimportant. Over time, repeated experiences like this can make teens feel that their emotions are irrelevant or that adults don't take them seriously. This perception fosters a subtle form of rebellion. The disrespectful behavior becomes a tool to assert individuality and demand recognition. Social dynamics with peers also amplify this effect. Teens often look for validation from friends when they feel dismissed at home or school. If peers respond with understanding or approval to behaviors adults label as disrespectful, the teen may continue these patterns, believing that it is the only way to have their emotions acknowledged. This creates a feedback loop where the behavior is reinforced by social acceptance, making it harder for adults to intervene without first addressing the underlying need for validation. Ultimately, what looks like defiance or rudeness is often a sign that a teen's voice isn't being heard. By creating spaces for open dialogue, actively listening, and acknowledging their emotions without judgment, adults can break the cycle of disrespect. Teens who feel understood are more likely to respond respectfully, not because they are being controlled, but because their need for recognition and validation has been met. Understanding the roots of this behavior shifts the focus from punishment to connection, paving the way for healthier communication and stronger relationships. Today's teenagers face pressures unlike any previous generation, and these pressures often manifest as behavior adults interpret as disrespect. Academic demands are intense, with heavy workloads, standardized testing, extracurricular commitments, and the constant push to excel. Beyond school, social media adds another layer of stress. Teens are constantly comparing themselves to carefully curated images of peers, measuring popularity, achievements, and appearance. This relentless environment can overwhelm their still developing coping mechanisms, leaving them irritable, anxious, and prone to conflict. What adults perceive as rudeness is frequently the outward expression of internal tension that has nowhere else to go. Family expectations contribute to this pressure as well. Many teens feel the weight of parental hopes for academic success, career planning, or behavior standards. When these expectations clash with a teen's desire for autonomy or their own interests, frustration builds. They may respond with short temper, sarcasm, or avoidance. Behaviors often labeled as disrespectful. This is not a rejection of family values, but a reflection of the stress of balancing external demands with personal needs. Teens need guidance, but they also need space to navigate their responsibilities without feeling suffocated, and disrespect can be their unconscious way of asserting that balance. Social stress is equally significant. Friendships, romantic relationships, and peer dynamics are central to a teen's sense of identity and belonging. Yet they are often fraught with misunderstandings, competition, and social pressure. Cyberbullying and public scrutiny on social media intensify these struggles. Even small setbacks can feel devastating, and teens may lash out at family or authority figures as a way to release accumulated stress. Emotional regulation skills are still developing at this age, so the intensity of social and academic pressure can easily translate into what appears to be disrespectful behavior. Moreover, modern teens face uncertainty about the future. Economic instability, climate change, and global events are sources of worry that few adults experienced at the same age. The constant awareness of these larger societal pressures can heighten anxiety, making patience and composure harder to maintain. Disrespectful reactions often emerge when teens feel cornered, overwhelmed, or powerless in the face of expectations that feel impossible to meet. They may not have the strategies yet to process these fears constructively, and their behavior becomes an outlet for stress and frustration. Understanding that disrespect can stem from chronic stress, rather than deliberate defiance, changes how adults should respond. Instead of reacting with punishment or criticism, providing support, empathy, and coping strategies helps teens channel their stress productively. Encouraging open conversations about pressures, offering tools for time management, emotional regulation, and stress relief, and validating their feelings can prevent frustration from escalating into disrespect. When teens feel supported, they are better able to navigate pressure without letting it spill over into their relationships and behavior. Teens often mirror the behavior they observe in the adults around them, and this modeling can heavily influence how they communicate, especially under stress. From early childhood, individuals learn social norms and communication styles by watching caregivers, teachers, and other authority figures. If a teen regularly witnesses sarcasm, shouting, dismissive comments, or passive-aggressive behavior, they internalize these patterns as acceptable ways to express frustration or assert themselves. Even well-meaning adults who occasionally lose their temper or speak sharply in stressful moments are inadvertently teaching teens that disrespectful communication is a natural response to tension. The lessons are subtle but powerful, and teens may unconsciously replicate these behaviors with friends, siblings, or parents. This modeling is amplified by consistency or inconsistency in adult behavior. Teens are highly perceptive to double standards. For example, if an adult insists on politeness while frequently expressing irritation in dismissive or rude ways, the teen quickly notices the contradiction. Over time, they may emulate the behavior, reasoning that if adults handle stress with sarcasm or impatience, they too are justified in responding in similar ways. This is not a conscious rebellion, but a learned strategy for navigating conflict. The home environment, classroom, and broader social contexts all contribute to shaping these behavioral patterns. The emotional context of adult behavior also matters. When parents or guardians express frustration in front of teens without demonstrating coping strategies, teens witness a cycle of unregulated emotion. This can normalize reactive or disrespectful responses as acceptable methods for handling disagreements or challenges. A teen observing an adult snapping at a sibling or reacting angrily to setbacks may internalize that such behaviors are an effective way to communicate feelings. Even if the underlying intent is not malicious, they are absorbing behavioral scripts for how to interact with others under stress. Media and cultural examples further reinforce this effect. Television, social media, and online influencers often depict disrespectful interactions as humorous, clever, or effective. Teens who already experience high emotional arousal or stress may combine these modeled behaviors from adults and media into their own communication style. Without guidance on appropriate expression, they may default to mimicry, inadvertently reinforcing patterns of sarcasm, dismissiveness, or hostility. Recognizing that disrespectful behavior can be learned rather than innate shifts how adults approach correction. Instead of simply punishing the teen, it becomes important to model calm, respectful communication consistently. Demonstrating active listening, constructive problem solving, and measured responses to stress provides a live example for teens to internalize. By consciously creating an environment where respectful communication is the norm, adults can help break cycles of learned disrespect, replacing mimicry with healthy interaction patterns. Adolescence is a critical period for developing identity and independence, and a teen's apparent disrespect often stems from their natural desire for autonomy. During this stage, young people are learning to define themselves outside of their family unit, exploring personal beliefs, interests, and values. When they feel overly controlled, micromanaged, or constantly corrected, they may respond with defiance, arguing, or dismissive behavior. This is not necessarily a rejection of authority, it is an attempt to assert individuality and carve out personal space. Disrespect can serve as a signal that their need for independence is being constrained, and it often emerges in situations where they feel their choices or opinions are undervalued. The struggle for autonomy is closely tied to self-esteem and identity formation. Teens who feel they have little control over decisions in their lives may express frustration through oppositional behavior. Simple requests or rules from adults, curfews, homework expectations, or chores can trigger strong emotional reactions, if the teen perceives them as limitations rather than guidance. The behavior is a way of testing boundaries, seeking recognition as a capable individual, and negotiating the balance between dependence and independence. By attempting to assert control, they are practicing the skills needed to become self-reliant adults. Peer influence plays a role in this dynamic as well. Teens are highly sensitive to social comparisons and often gauge their independence by observing how their friends navigate rules and parental expectations. They may adopt more assertive or rebellious behaviors as a means of fitting in or demonstrating maturity. When teens see peers successfully negotiating autonomy, they may push back against adults more strongly, using behaviors adults perceive as disrespectful to assert their own agency. This experimentation is a natural part of learning self-governance and social negotiation. It is important to recognize that offering appropriate choices can reduce conflicts. When teens are given opportunities to make decisions within safe boundaries, such as selecting extracurricular activities, managing aspects of their schedule, or contributing to family decisions, they feel respected and empowered. The need to rebel or act out diminishes because the teen's desire for autonomy is being acknowledged. In contrast, environments that are overly rigid or controlling often exacerbate power struggles, reinforcing the very disrespect adults are trying to curb. Ultimately, what appears as defiance or rudeness is frequently a teen's way of asserting identity and independence. When adults understand this developmental need, they can respond with strategies that balance guidance and freedom. Providing choices, listening to opinions, and negotiating expectations respectfully allows teens to exercise control safely, fostering maturity and cooperation. Disrespect, then, becomes not a sign of failure, but a natural expression of growth, signaling that the teen is navigating the delicate path from dependence to self-sufficiency.